The Incredible Hulk is the second movie released in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and surprisingly, the only Hulk movie that we have in the MCU. Now I remember when this movie was announced, there were a lot of people who were pretty skeptical towards it. Because in 2003, we got a different version of the Hulk directed by Ang Lee that nobody really liked. I personally thought that movie was cluttered, boring, and just not memorable whatsoever. Seriously, show of hands, how many of you remember that movie? Exactly. Thankfully though, this version turned out to be a really solid Hulk movie and superhero movie in general. So let's discuss it. So one of the things that I really like about this movie is its opening. Because the opening of the movie is essentially a flashback of events that shows why Bruce Banner turns into the Hulk whenever he gets angry. And I think that's perfect for a Hulk movie because we, as the audience, we don't really care too much about the backstory of the Hulk. We care more about seeing the various conflicts and struggles that Bruce Banner has to go through because of the dangerous power that he has. And the opening of the movie explains that Bruce Banner was a scientist working for the US Army. He was studying gamma radiation as a way to make super soldiers. Because the Army is trying to replicate the serum from World War II that turned Steve Rogers into Captain America. Which is awesome because that already right there ties in the Hulk with Captain America for later in the MCU. So Bruce Banner chose to test it on himself because he was absolutely certain that it would work. And all of that gamma radiation turned him into an enormous green rage monster that killed some people. Some, like himself and his girlfriend Betty, will say that it was an experiment that went very wrong. Others, however, like Betty's father, General Ross, will call it an experiment that went very right. And ever since then, he has had the Army hunting down Bruce Banner so he can get his Hulk weapon back. So now the movie flash forwards to the present day. Bruce Banner is hiding out in Brazil. He's working in a soda factory. All the while communicating via email with a guy who goes by the alias of Mr. Blue in trying to find a cure for himself. We also see that Bruce wears this heart monitor watch thing that kind of keeps track of his heart rate when it starts building up as a sign for Bruce to calm down before shit hits the fan. Eventually though, the US Army is able to track Bruce down, this time with a new soldier in their lineup, and that is British soldier Emil Blonsky. And you can tell he's just basically a guy who joined the military as a legal way to kill people, so you know right away he's bad news. So they're chasing Bruce down through the streets, and the whole time he's trying to make sure he can evade them while also making sure his heart rate doesn't reach a certain level, which is already really tough. Then he runs into these thugs who were giving him a hard time earlier in this movie, and now they're trying to kick his ass. It all eventually becomes too much, and in the soda warehouse, Bruce just officially loses it and turns into the Hulk. Which leaves you watching this like, yeah, you're all dead now. And the Hulk just completely takes out the thugs and the SWAT team like they are absolutely nothing. He even at one point almost takes out Emil Blonsky by throwing a freaking forklift at him before the Hulk just escapes the warehouse. And naturally, after witnessing all that firsthand, Blonsky knows that they're going to need something much more if they're going to bring the Hulk down. So he's able to convince Ross to inject him with this new super soldier serum, just a small dose of it to make him more equipped to face the Hulk. Now in the meantime, Bruce has made it back to the United States. He's reunited with Betty, who's been able to get him the extra data that he needs to send to Mr. Blue in order to find a cure. But once again, the Army is able to track him down, and this time they are prepared for him. They start firing at him with these giant sonic cannon things. Blonsky's now actually able to contribute more because of his superhuman abilities. It actually made for a pretty sweet action scene. And then comes the moment when you start to think that Bruce just might actually be capable of controlling the Hulk. Because throughout this fight, when he sees that Betty might be in some kind of danger, he's able to get himself under control, fight his way through what he's going through, and be able to protect her. And then Blonsky has the biggest ego trip that he could possibly have in a situation like this. He decides to get right up into the Hulk's face, you know, trying to talk shit to him. And the Hulk just looks at him like, bitch, please, and just front kicks him 400 yards into a tree, which shatters every bone in Blonsky's body. To everyone's surprise though, the serum has given Blonsky the ability to heal from those injuries pretty quickly, and now he's able to go after Banner again. So now that Bruce and Betty have been able to escape the Army, the goal is to now finally find the alleged Mr. Blue. They find him, he's played by Tim Blake Nelson, he's a professor at, I want to say, NYU? They give him the data, and now that he has it, he's able to set up the procedure that needs to be done to cure Bruce. But before they can do anything, he warns that this procedure may only temporarily suppress the Hulk and not necessarily cure Bruce from it, or it could even kill Bruce. Still, they undergo the procedure, and it seems like it worked, but it unfortunately happened in like the worst timing ever. because now the US Army has found him yet again, and because he no longer has his power, he has no way to defend himself against them, and they just take him away. On the other hand, Blonsky has different plans. He forces Tim Blake Nelson to perform the procedure he performed on Bruce, but to inject Blonsky with Bruce's blood so that he can have his power. Tim Blake Nelson does this, but the mixture of Bruce's blood and Blonsky's serum blood is what turns him into the Abomination, which is like this big, scaly, freaky looking demon Hulk. And yeah, after that, the Abomination just goes ape shit on the city, and Bruce now knows that he is the only one with the power to defeat him. Especially in the fact that there had been signs that shows that Bruce may be capable of controlling the Hulk. So he just jumps out of the plane, and it's now fingers crossed that he can still change. He's luckily able to, and now we get an intense fight between the Hulk and the Abomination. And the Hulk, well, he kind of gets his dick kicked in. I mean, the Abomination is in complete control of the fight. It looks like he's gonna kill the Hulk, and even kill Betty for that matter at one point. But again, once the Hulk is able to see that Betty's life is potentially in danger, he's able to flip the switch and just start taking control of the fight. He saves Betty from dying, and then finally we hear the famous lines, "Hulk smash!" And from there, he just completely makes the Abomination his bitch. It looks like he's gonna kill the Abomination by strangling him to death with like this long chain thing, but Betty stops him from doing that because naturally she doesn't want to see the Hulk be a killer. The Hulk again is able to recognize who Betty is. He seems to be more approachable, I want to say, but then immediately after that, he has to go back on the run from the army. We see Bruce once again later on in British Columbia, and now we see he's trying to see if he can initiate the transformation into the Hulk in a controlled manner. We see his eyes turn green, but just before we can see anything else, the movie flips scenes over to General Ross. He's drinking in a bar somewhere, when out of nowhere Tony Stark shows up, and he's arrived to come tell the General that there is a team being put together, which only got everyone who saw that scene that much more amped for the Avengers. So all in all, I thought The Incredible Hulk was a really good movie. I thought Edward Norton did a great job as the Hulk. I mean, he was smart, he was cautious about everything. You could tell he wants to do everything he can to overcome this transformation. And he's also a really skinny guy, which I think added a lot more to the transformation when he does become the Hulk. Tim Roth was great as Emil Blonsky. William Hurt was really good as General Ross. I liked Tim Blake Nelson in this movie. The story was good. The action sequences were really enjoyable. I thought the fight between the Hulk and the Abomination was really awesome. My only flaws with this movie are I do feel this movie had a bit too serious of a tone at times. I would have liked it to at least have some of the good humor that we're used to seeing in the Marvel movies nowadays. And also, Liv Tyler as Betty Ross, I think she does a fine job in the role, but I don't think it's a super memorable performance. Like, it's not as good as Gwyneth Paltrow or Natalie Portman, you know, some of the other female leads in the MCU. But in the end, it's a solid addition to this franchise, and I think it's the perfect way to do a superhero movie for a superhero like the Hulk. So that's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you all next time.